primera vez, sabiéndola un imposible, también en medio de un triángulo ella quedó, porque igual que yo se estremeció, comprometió su corazón y nunca pensó que perteneciendo a otro poner sus ojos en mí. Eso haría de nosotros culpables de convertir nuestro querer en un triángulo, 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 nuestro querer. Estoy en medio de un triángulo sin solución, ni siquiera justificación. Me enamoré cuando la vi por primera vez, sabiéndola imposible. También en medio de un triángulo ella quedó, porque igual que yo se estremeció, comprometió su corazón y nunca pensó que perteneciendo a otro poner sus ojos en mí. Eso haría de nosotros culpables de convertir nuestro querer en un triángulo, 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 nuestro querer, triángulo, triángulo, nuestro querer.
Come, gather, not into a common space sharing physical closeness we long for, precluded by wise choice, but come, gather into this common time and common space. We need to be together. We yearn for connection. We hunger for the familiar faces of friends, the sound of shared voices proclaiming who we are, where we are going, that which resonates with our hopes, our dreams, our values. Come, gather. We are here in this space made of all spaces, and we share our becoming in this moment. Listen to these words as we light our chalice, written by the Reverend Nancy Reed McKee. Our community knows no boundaries. We are not confined by the physical limits of walls, or, for that matter, of what often binds us, restricts us, holds us back. We are freer than we know when we release ourselves and each other from expectations of what is needed for true community. We are here together in space. I see you. I hear you. I love you, and I light this chalice, a beacon of this community, holding us all together here, now. As is our custom, I hope you will feel comfortable enough to say out loud, even if you are alone, looking at the screen, our spoken affirmation. The words will be on the screen. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another. Our opening thought comes from an article called Side Effects of Moving to a New Country from a blog called Oh My God. The author, Anonymous, writes, during the first month, you will hate everything. The first time I moved to a foreign country, I stepped off the plane, updated my Facebook status, and went to experience the new city. 10 minutes later, I was crying out about how different and complicated everything was there. I didn't know where the grocery store was, how to make a sign for the taxi to stop, which cell phone company to use, what neighborhood to select to live in. You miss things you never cared about. It's incredible how quickly you flip from being happy at the hotel room, playing with all the free stuff, to the kind of bitterness that makes you hate almost everything in that city. You are literally under some sort of culture shock. You don't have any friends. You fear about everything. You don't know anybody, and you don't trust anybody. Even the tiniest detail of routine life is different, from the road signs to the way they eat breakfast. Before leaving your country, you prepare yourself to be far from friends and neighbors, but you completely forget to mentally prepare yourself to live in a world where plants, buildings, animals, smells, and tastes are absolutely different. At any time of day, you are surrounded by things that make you remember you don't belong there. Consequently, you immediately start hating very much everybody and everything there. The flowers are beautiful, but stinky. The food is cheap, but fatty. Your new neighbors are friendly, but annoying. There are lots of little details you're so used to in your country that you assume are part of the way the world works, and you get exhausted from having to learn how to rebuild the entire structure from zero. So I decided to move back to my country, looking forward to be again part of a culture that I feel comfortable and familiar with. Air. Every single symptom I felt in the foreign country, I experienced when I moved back home, only they were in reverse.
Love will guide us, Jesus guide us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot
reading this morning is from a UU program called Building the World We Dream About by the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker. She writes, "To come of age in America as a white person is to be educated into ignorance. It is to be culturally shaped to not know and not want to know the actual context in which I live. I was born into the real world in a small town at the edge of the rainforest on the coast of Washington State. The world was a mixture of violence and beauty, human goodness and human greed, tender relationships and exploitation. But I learned to not see life as a whole. Our town was a white settlement. Upriver was the Quinault Indian Reservation. But in fact, the real world I was born into included richly diverse cultures and communities. In addition to the community I knew, the white settlement of people who logged the forest, fished the waters, and built wood-framed houses warmed with steaming coffee. There were other communities. The Quinault, Makah, Puyallup Indians lived throughout Southwest Washington, preserving tribal ways against all odds. Chinese American cultural organizations in Seattle nurtured Chinese traditions and institutions at the heart of the city. Japanese Americans established temples and churches, landscaped gardens, shaped architectural styles, farmed the land. Farm workers from Mexico harvested the apples in Yakima and Wenatchee and stayed to found Spanish-speaking towns. African Americans established churches, neighborhoods, clubs, and civic organizations. By the time I came of age, neighborhood and church, economic patterns, cultural symbolism, theological doctrines, and public education had narrowed my awareness to the country I lived in to the point of ignorance. The Chinese, African, Latino, Latina, Japanese, and First Nations peoples had largely disappeared from my consciousness. I inhabited a white enclave that did not know and did not want to know the complex multicultural history of the land in which I lived. Today is February 14th, Valentine's Day. Like many festive traditions we've inherited, Valentine's Day claims differing histories. 3 come to mind. Myth 1. When the Roman emperor decided single men made better soldiers, he outlawed marriage for young men. A priest named Valentine defied the law and secretly married young lovers. It cost him his life. Myth 2. Another priest, also named Valentine, helped Christians escape harsh Roman prisons. He was imprisoned and fell in love with a visitor, possibly his jailer's daughter. He sent her an endearing letter, signing it, "From your Valentine." Myth 3 suggests the Christian church may have decided to plunk Valentine's Day in February in an effort to Christianize the pagan celebration of Lupercalia, a fertility festival. History often takes different paths from then to now. Now is here, And for our practices this morning, a poem. May it bring to mind and heart love you have offered and received, love gained and lost, love remembered, regretted, and yet still cherished. The author, known only as Infleshed, gives us this reflection they simply call love. Love cannot be bought or sold. It does not make a profit. Love does not hide from truth. Love dives deep. Love takes on flesh. Love is queer. Love is platonic. Love is erotic. Love is asexual. Love confronts evil. Love delights in pleasure. Love touches and weeps and flirts and feeds and creates. Love is risky. Love challenges systemic evil in all its forms. Love is simple, but not easy. Love is collective. Love rises up. Love apologizes. Love believes. Love corrects. Love holds accountable. Love pays reparations. Love heals. Love tells its story. Love embraces everyone, every creature, every creation. It knows us intimately. It holds us collectively. Love transcends every boundary that seeks to confine it. It will not tolerate violence in its name. It does no harm.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know this rose will open.
A few of the pictures you're about to see I actually took myself. The better ones I downloaded from the internet. A few of the pictures will correlate directly to my presentation. The rest are provided simply to draw your attention away from the speaker, who will start now. I've lived 7 years in South America, 3 years in Chile, and 4 years in Colombia. My experience in each country was significantly different, but I believe the experience was good for me, providing a broader understanding of myself, my native country, and the people who accepted another foreigner in their land. Colombia is located in the northwest corner of the South American continent, bordered on the north by Panama and Venezuela, and on the south by Ecuador and Peru. To the east, it also has a border with Brazil. the capital, Bogota, is nestled up against the Andes and looks out over the Altiplano before the land drops down to the coffee plantations. Colombia has land on both the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean. Chile is a beautiful country, stretching south about 2,600 miles from the Peruvian border to the southern tip of the continent. To the west, the Pacific Ocean runs the entire length of the country, and the Andes Mountains create the eastern border. The average width of the country is only 109 miles. There are many perfectly cone-shaped, snow-capped volcanoes, historic port cities, and beautiful lakes. I lived in Chile beginning in 1964, right after I graduated from college. John F. Kennedy became president the year I started college, and many of his initiatives were very exciting and appealing to me. With the possibility of serving in the Peace Corps rather than the Marine Corps among them. Serving my country and people in the third world who needed help was very exciting to me and to many college students. It moved me to pick up a minor in Spanish with the thought that perhaps I might wind up in the Peace Corps, somewhere in Central or South America. But then President Kennedy was assassinated in November of 1963. And a bit later, my parents divorced in January of 1964. I was on track to graduate in June with a bachelor's degree in social science, but with no clear career goal. With my world upturned and the exciting prospect of becoming a volunteer, it was easy for me to apply to become a member of the Peace Corps. My application was accepted, and after 3 months training at Michigan State, I arrived in Chile and was assigned to an agrarian reform colony outside of the small town of Anglo in central Chile. Agrarian reform was a very important issue in Chile because at the time I arrived there, most of the rural population were deprived of land ownership and survived as peons on the large haciendas. The Chilean government expropriated many large, marginally productive haciendas and divided the land into multiple smaller farms, built houses onto each one, and gave the property to the poor residents. Any hacienda converted in this manner was then referred to as a colony. The one I lived and worked on was called Lorenco and consisted of 2,500 acres divided into a dozen fairly spread out farms, plus 10 small 2 to 3 acre plots for the really poor citizens. There was only one tractor on the whole colony. The land was mainly plowed with teams of oxen, and wheat was harvested by hand with scythes. Initially, I lived in the main house, a large place, once home for the owner of the old hacienda. I lived at one end, along with the agronomist in charge of the colony. He was responsible for assisting the inhabitants to become productive farmers or ranchers. The other end housed the one-room school and accommodations for the school teacher and her family. There was no electricity, but there was indoor plumbing. I wasn't happy living in the big house because I didn't respect the agronomist, who seemed to do very little. I soon found that one of the 10 small houses in the colony was unoccupied, and I was given permission to move in. It was about 700 square feet, built on a concrete foundation with brick walls and a corrugated tin roof. It had 4 small rooms. The interior was not finished out. There were no interior doors, and the inside walls looked the same as the exterior. There was no electricity, no gas, no water. I bought materials and built one interior door for my bedroom, a freestanding closet, and a stand for a wash basin. I bought an iron bed frame, mattress, and linens, a kerosene lamp and heater, a water pail, and a bedpan. I also built an outhouse on my neighbor's property, which we could all use. So much better than squatting in the wild blackberry bushes that grew on our land. My neighbor was a widow with 6 children. I paid her a nominal amount to cook my meals and do my laundry. I had plenty of money, as my house was rent-free, and the $85 a month that the Peace Corps paid me was more than enough for food, travel, and entertainment, all of which was pretty simple and really limited. One thing I did for fun was to occasionally play soccer with some of the young men in the colony. We played in a cow pasture with some rocks piled up to mark the goals. It was not a very smooth field, and during one game, a guy badly sprained his ankle. His teammates quickly began to administer first aid, which consisted of peeing on his ankle. At least someone got some relief. Hooray for alternative medicine. Transportation was by foot, or horseback, or if I walked about an hour up the road between Angol and the nearest town, I could catch a local bus. Needless to say, I walked a lot. If you lived in an area where it was justified, the Peace Corps would give you money to buy a horse. So I bought a brown gelding that I named Casi Feo, which means almost ugly, because of his disposition, not because of his looks. And I rode him quite a lot. The Peace Corps also monitored the health of all volunteers. This was done by U.S. Public Health Service physicians who gave us an exam every 6 months. One of my exams revealed that I had contracted tuberculosis. I very carefully followed the prescribed treatments and never had any problems. Social contact was fairly limited. I did see the widow next door and her kids every day, and a couple of other neighbors at times. On the rare occasions when I got into town, I would socialize with a family who were friends of the agronomist working on the colony, and I met a couple of young people about my age. I always felt comfortable and accepted by the Chilenos. I didn't feel criticized when I misspoke or mispronounced some word. They were curious about my homeland and generally admired President Kennedy. They more than once pointed out that in their country, none of their presidents had been assassinated. The only criticism I recall was from a couple of college students at a dinner I attended in town. They were members of the Communist Party, as were many college students in Chile, and were quite critical of Yankee imperialism and my presence in their country. I was determined to try to do something helpful for the people living on the colony Lorenco, but at the end of the day, I didn't feel that I'd accomplished my mission. After being in country for well over a year, just by chance, I attended a meeting organized by the Ministry of Agriculture, where an agronomist presented a program about 4-H clubs. After the program, I went up and spoke with Joel Balboa, the presenter, and learned more about his commitment to the program and asked if it was something I could do, though I was nominally assigned to another agency. He said I could, and gave me some reference materials and described what he was doing with the clubs he worked with near Temuco, the town where he lived. Temuco was also the location of one of the two Peace Corps regional offices. He was a horticulturalist focused on helping the indigenous people he worked with to grow crops that would improve their diets and also produce vegetables that could be sold in the town of Temuco. I didn't know anything about agriculture, so I looked for something that would be simple and, if possible, fit with what Joel Balboa was doing. He gave me the names of several farmers and ranchers he had contact with. One that I visited had a large Angora rabbit farm. There was a ready market for the wool, and he really had a big operation. That visit got me thinking. Rabbits breed like, well, rabbits. They could be raised commercially in cages. Initial breeds could be selected for meat to further improve diets and provide another product that could be sold in town. It also fit very well with vegetable gardening, as rabbit poop is very rich in nitrogen, and it could be spread in the gardens to improve their growth. And the vegetables that weren't suitable for sale or human consumption could be fed to the rabbits. The immediate problem I faced was that my tour was nearing its end, and Joel Balboa worked out of Temuco, about 80 miles south of Anglo. So I discussed the possibility with the Peace Corps director and got permission to move to Temuco and work on the rabbit project and extend my service by 1 year. Upon my return to Chile, after an obligatory home leave before I started my 1 year extended service, I moved into a boarding house in Temuco, which included 3 meals a day, indoor plumbing, electricity, and running water. What a change from the colony Lolenco. My last year in country was very satisfying. I spent much time at the Peace Corps regional office and worked closely with Joel Balboa on forage clubs in the area. Living in Temuco also gave me access to newspapers and a hot shower. My favorite source of news was the international edition of Time magazine. That was available once each month. I would buy a copy from my favorite street vendor and read it cover to cover once I got back to the boarding house. Fortunately, I was proud to leave Chile with the feeling that I had successfully accomplished the Peace Corps' 3 goals. 1, I had developed an understanding and appreciation for the people of my host country. 2, those I had contact with had obtained some understanding of America and its people. And 3, the Rabbit Project was deemed a great success by Peace Corps administration and my co-worker, Joel Balboa. As I said in my opening remarks, I've also lived 4 years in Colombia. My return to South America was due more to fate than to thoughtful planning. Shortly after my return to the States from the Peace Corps, Carol and I were married, and I completed an MBA in accounting. I graduated in June of 1970 and went to work for one of the Big 8 international CPA firms in their San Diego office. 2 years later, I had the opportunity to significantly increase my salary by going to work as the chief financial officer of a client company, Sunburst Farms, Flora America, that was, at the time, the largest flower farm in the world, which had pioneered the business plan of delivering directly from the farm those bundles of fresh-cut flowers we now see in most supermarkets. The farm was located outside Bogota and employed about 1,000 people. My office was initially near San Diego, but within a year we moved to Bogota, where the real business was. One of the reasons the farm was located outside Bogota was due to its ideal growing conditions. The proximity to the equator, plus the altitude, 8,600 feet, created a very stable climate. It never froze, and the high temps never rose above the mid-70s. The second reason was that the Colombian government had provided a significant financial incentive to any company producing goods for export, with the aim of diversifying the economy away from coffee and earning additional foreign exchange from the new exports. Within 6 months of our arrival, the government announced that their plan had worked so well that they no longer needed to provide the financial incentives. Our company was very highly leveraged, and the loss of this income quickly moved it towards bankruptcy. It was almost certain that whoever bought this company would bring in their own finance people. As luck would have it, the CPA firm I previously worked for in San Diego had an office in Bogota, and the resident gringo was due to cycle back to the U.S. I walked in off the street and fairly quickly got rehired. So for most of the 4 years in Colombia, I was in public accounting. My working language was Spanish. The only time I spoke English was at home. Carol and I had found a nice house in a gated community where many expatriates lived. It was located in the foothills of the Andes Mountains and had 7 levels. We loved that house. The arrow in this picture shows its location. The neighborhood had 2 tennis courts and a nice playground for the kids. We had a live-in cook, maid, and another lady that came part-time to assist with housekeeping. Everyone in that neighborhood had domestic help. It was very affordable, and it was very ill-advised to leave your home unattended at any time for security reasons. In order to relate better with host country nationals, communicate clearly with our domestic help, and effectively go shopping, Carol spent a lot of time in class studying Spanish. Grocery shopping was very different in Bogota. Meat was cut differently, and a butcher shop located downtown with heavy traffic was the recommended source. One cut, called lomo, was like a foot-long filet mignon. Bread was bought at a bakery, and limited canned goods could be bought at a small deli at the entrance to our neighborhood. We vacationed in California once each year and always returned with packets of Lowry spaghetti sauce and peanut butter, as these items we liked very much, and they were never available in Bogota. The one supermarket had fruits and vegetables, but the variety was much greater. For example, over 10 varieties of potatoes, and it was very different from your local Albertsons. Carol appreciated all the guidance and advice offered by our cook and maid. One recommended fruit we had never seen before but loved was called a lulo, about the size of a plum. Carol was instructed always to buy about 15 lulos, but only if they looked rotten. The cook would make them into a delicious drink that we enjoyed often. There was a significant expatriate population and a dual language preschool and primary school. For adults, there was an English language theater group that Carol became very active in, mainly as a result of having taken one costume design class in college and still having the textbook. She played an important role in designing and then making the costumes with the help of others. The highlight may have been the staging of the musical 1776 in 1976, which involved making 24 frock coats and breeches. One additional benefit of all the cool costumes was to give our girls the chance to really dress up. Having full-time babysitters, we played a lot of mixed doubles tennis and frequently had a chance to play bridge or go to parties. There were also trips to Seward's Finca, a rural coffee farm with a main house, several smaller ones, horses, and a swimming pool. It was an easy drive down from Bogota, and we would make it about once each year. One year, we also flew to the historic city of Cartagena and enjoyed a week on the Caribbean coast. We found that there was a very small middle class in Colombia. Most of our social contact was with other expatriates. But we did become friends with the Colombian partner in charge of the CPA firm I worked for. We occasionally had dinner with Horacio and his wife Connie, and once spent a weekend with them at his mother-in-law's farm, and all had a wonderful time. During the 4 years we lived in Colombia, our health was generally pretty good, with a few exceptions. Shortly after we arrived in Bogota, our twin daughters, who were 2 years old at the time, contracted a mysterious intestinal ailment, which was quite common, we found out later. This problem led to dehydration and a brief hospitalization for both of them, which was quite stressful for Carol, who had limited Spanish at the time. Also, our youngest daughter, born about 2 years later, got roundworms in spite of our cook and maid always doing their best to keep things clean, including washing fruit and leafy vegetables with chlorinated water to kill any bugs. We were very pleased to find that the pediatrician made house calls so that she could be treated at home with medication, just like the good old days. Driving in Bogota was challenging for us. Colombian drivers followed very closely and used their horns a lot. We would often see really small Fiats on the road with 2 truck air horns mounted on the roof so the driver could properly let others know that he had the right of way. In Chile, I always felt safe, and I rarely saw any beggars on the streets when I went into the cities. It was very different in Colombia. Part of the problem was due to the continuing battle between the FARC, the Colombian Revolutionary Army, and the national government, and also the operations of the drug cartels. If we left our neighborhood to go shopping, beggar children would always approach our car when we parked. The Colombian neighbor who lived up the hill from us had an armed guard, and whenever he left home in his car, he was always followed by armed staff in another car. The last year we were there, kidnapping became increasingly common and a growing concern. When the vice president of Sears Colombia, one of my clients, was kidnapped and held for ransom by the FARC, we hired an armed guard for our house, and I looked to transfer back to the States. While the climate was ideal and the cost of living very low, we could hardly wait to leave Colombia. I found that living overseas gives you a different perspective on many things: social values, politics, what's good to eat, and what's really important, among other things. Every country has social, economic, and political challenges that are different. I also believe that the citizens of every country on this planet have many things in common, as we're all humans, regardless of race, religion, or national origin. Living in a different country gives you a much broader perspective on life and may challenge you to change your views and opinions about many things. I am thankful to have had the experience.
Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, beloved. Where you go, I will go. And your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go. Immigrant. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go. Immigrant. Where you go, I will go. And your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go, Mother Earth. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, Mother Earth. Where you go, I will go. And your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go, children. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, children. Where you go, I will go. And your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. Where you go, I will go, ancestors. Where you go, I will go. Where you go, I will go, ancestors. Where you go, I will go. And your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine. And your people are my people. Your people are mine. Your people are my people. You're divine, my divine.
Our closing thought comes from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., made in an interview with David Kupfer for the Progressive magazine, November 2006. Of the 7 million Americans living abroad, 1 million are military, and not all of them are Republicans. The other 6 million are overwhelmingly Democrat, because people who live in foreign countries have a much different perspective as to what is happening in our country. Please join me as together we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Hi, this is Reverend Christine Tata. February 21st, we'll be talking about Eve in Africa, mitochondrial Eve, the source of the DNA that is the mother of us all. It's Black History Month, so I went to Africa in my mind and discovered there that that's the seat of all humanity. Mitochondrial Eve is the mother of us all, and that means we're all her children. We are all kin. I believe that the mother of us all would say to us now, first of all, clean up your mess. And second of all, can't you kids learn to get along? Please join the Red River Unitarian Universalists and me on February 21st, Eve in Africa. I'll see you then. Bye now.